We've considered the permanent stage in the back of our minds for a long time, but the truth of the matter is, since we have to build the entire stage every year, we kind of succumb to the temptation of making individual sets for the individual shows. I have had sort of a hidden guilt burden over all that period of time because we try to present Shakespeare as immediately and accessibly and in the same kind of style that he presented it, which was obviously terrifically effective. And he didn't have scenery. He would bring on scenic pieces maybe, but they'd be more likely to be a banner or a wagon or maybe a bed or something like that. But in terms of trying to set an entire scene, the whole basis of Elizabethan theater was theatricality, imagination, letting the actors create the environment. But even more particularly, and we certainly did adhere to this latter aspect, Shakespeare's sense of rhythm applied not only to language and poetry, but to scenic flow. His scenes flow almost as if it was cinematography, where characters will leave one scene saying their final lines as the next people are already walking on stage. I remember I got a big kick out one time when I did Henry IV Part 1, and Hotspur, who was Prince Hal's antagonist, had a nice little scene with his wife, and when they finished up and they exited, as they walked away, Hal popped this trap door up from under the stage and came right up into their living room, more or less. And it's those kinds of jump cuts and the juxtaposition of how scenes go together, which I think is also part of what makes Shakespeare theater vivid and fast-moving and actually very modern, just as I say, like with the movies. So we kept that part true, but we kept going with individual sets for each show, with particular decor, with changing where the doors were, with having an upper level, which was common in Shakespeare, but we changed how that worked. We really almost had 3 levels when over there. We did Twelfth Night. We built a very large, nice set, and it was to serve for all 3 shows, including the review that we did at the end of the season. But ultimately, Shakespeare's stage was permanent, and so philosophically, we were already cheating a little bit there. But especially when you have to take the set down each year and build it, first you have to build the stage, and then to build 2 sets on top of it. It was a lot of man hours, it was a lot of materials, it was a lot of strain, especially going from the first show to the second show, because you have a limited amount of time to get the second set up. And so ultimately we decided that if we could get a little bit of funding, that we would build a permanent stage house that would be very much like an Elizabethan-style playhouse. And then we would build it so it could be disassembled, because Stan Hewitt doesn't want, the set sitting here all year long, nor do we, out weathering. So we'll be able to break it apart, take it down to another part of the property, set it up in good storage and tarp it over, and just bring it back and assemble it once. And the reassembly will be a fraction of the time that it takes to build from scratch. But even more important, the second show will just change a few decorative elements. So in essence, once the first show's up, we're set for the second show. And with all of those positives in mind, and after a little bit of funding help, then we decided we'd make the move this year. In the same kind of playhouse you did. So, the kinds of things that we do know about the playhouse is that they would have a big open performing area. They were forced, because of the architectural engineering at the time, to have 2 very large columns that came up on either side of the stage. The presumption was about 12 feet down from the back wall. But they're very irritating because they get in your way. And if you're standing here and that's a column, then a certain number of people can't see you, so you can't stand in one place too long. We don't have the overhead, and if we did, we would use some kind of steel or modern engineering to just make it a cantilevered roof, which we're not doing. But we don't have to deal with columns, so that part's good in terms of authenticity. But basically, there was what they called an inner below, which are in the process of building here. These doors that we've just put in will open either way, and therefore actors can get a sense of going indoors or outdoors, depending on which way the doors go. We can open up the doors wide and then leave this open and have decorative items, tapestries, whatever back here to help set that individual scene. We also have a pretty good idea that they would bring on wagons occasionally, for example, if they wanted to bring on a large bed or a table with trestle seating and so forth on either side. We've got that set up so it can go far enough back in that we can roll that out. Then, on either side of the stage, there are 2 other doors. This will be a doorway. In fact, it's right over there with the stain drying. And over on this side, there will be another doorway. The other aspect that we know was common, and you can see evidence of it in such things as Romeo and Juliet and various other shows, but there's an upper above, and you can see we're starting to frame in a door for the upper above. That will be a playing area up top with stairs available from the back, and so the balcony scene, for example, from Romeo and Juliet would be there. I would say it's very probable that when Richard III comes back on pretending to be a humble man who doesn't want to be king and is talking with priests so that he can be more holy and pious, and Buckingham tries to talk him in with the crowd down in the bottom to taking the crown. Please take the crown. Oh, I couldn't. No, please take it, until finally he agrees and grabs the crown he's been trying to steal for a long time. Presumption would be that he would have been on the upper above as well. So different shows use it in different ways. It was also used, the upper above was used for the live musicians that could sit in there. And if they weren't using it for acting or for live musicians, they would actually let some of the aristocrats or royalty or whatever buy those seats and be able to watch the show from up above. And we've duplicated basically all those areas. Even though we don't have groundlings, we do have our seats spread out, and we have chosen to use the rows coming into the stage as entrances and exits. There's a lot of debate whether that would have happened in Shakespeare's time. Some people say, oh my God, the actors never could have gone through that rowdy crowd and come right up to the stage. But I'm sorry, if the crowd was that rowdy, they could have climbed on the stage. And there are times when it just seems like it would have been very plausible for people to have been making entrances from the audience. There's no way we can determine that historically, but we find that for the variety and the staging dynamic, we like to be able to have people come up, so we have steps here and steps on the sides so that they can approach across the grounds. In our previous show, one of the things I particularly liked is Demetrius is trying to run away from Helena, who's in love with him, but he doesn't want her for a girlfriend, and she follows him into the woods one night when he's trying to chase what he thinks is his true love. And Demetrius and Helena came running like 35 or 40 yards at full gallop towards the stage, with him running and her in pursuit, and I thought that was perfect for the scene. First of all, because they didn't have to act exhausted or winded when they got on stage, because they were, but also the sense of how hard he's trying to get away and how determined Helen is to come in. In terms of the decoration of the stage, the globe has some fairly fancy decoration up there, and in future seasons we might consider adding that to it. We might even put a couple small columns just as a tribute to it right up in these corners where they wouldn't be any impediment to the acting area. But for now we're going to go with what we know the outside of the globe looked like, which was the Tudor stucco and dark timbers. That's going to be the basic look of the stage, with opportunities to decorate it in small ways to help differentiate it from show to show.